Hello and welcome to Discussions with the Director. My name is Dr. Shileste Overton Morris, and I serve as the Chief Program Officer at the Central Susquehanna Intermediate Unit and Director of the Center for Schools and Communities. These discussions give me the opportunity to share with you how our core values connect with our work here at the Center. Our core values include service to others, equity in action, passion for excellence, and innovation for growth. Today's discussion will focus on the Center for Schools and Communities' 35th anniversary. Today's discussion will focus on all four of our core values as we talked to Ms. Lynn Cromley, the former director at the Center for Schools and Communities, and the former assistant director at the Central Susquehanna Intermediate Unit. So I am so excited to have with me today Ms. Lynn Cromley, a former colleague, and most of all, a great friend and mentor. So thank you, Lynn, for being with us today. We're excited again to have you.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here, Shileste. I appreciate it.
Great. So we're going to be talking about the 35 years here at the Center for Schools and Communities. And as you know, the center got its start in 1988. And so can you tell us a little bit about the beginnings of the center? What were the things that the center was focused on, and how did it grow during, let's say, those first 10 years?
Certainly. First, congratulations on 35 years. That is quite an accomplishment in the kind of work that we did together and that you continue to do with your wonderful staff. It's just amazing. So that's, kudos there. As you know, the parent organization for the center, the Central Susquehanna Intermediate Unit, is well-respected education service agency in Pennsylvania and had a long and rich history of being a partner with the Department of Education on many statewide initiatives. And so in 1988, we were well poised as we were doing services for various programs to continue work for the Department of Education around some specific initiatives. And that work really was in helping to define goals for programs, accomplishments that the department was hoping to achieve. If you remember, in the late 80s, really that was the point in time when people were first starting to look at collecting data. And a lot of it was more anecdotal in nature and more numbers rather than outcomes. So, the center started its very beginning roots with work that you still continue today on initiatives such as migrant education, pregnant and parenting teens. It was safe and drug-free schools back in the day, which continued as the Center for Safe Schools in Pennsylvania. But the work really was focused on helping districts to improve their services so that we could improve outcomes for kids and families.
Thank you so much for sharing that history in the beginning of the center's creation. And so just thinking about your tenure, I've been at the center, it'll be 25 years in March, hard to believe myself. And certainly under your mentorship, I was able to see the center grow by leaps and bounds. And so just thinking about what things are you most proud of from your tenure as director?
Well, I was honored to serve as the director of the center. And from those early days, I think the key to the success of the center was looking at how could we sustain the work that we did, how could we expand the partners that we served, and expand the kinds of work that we did and professionalize it. Not that it wasn't professional, but to look at, again, as I said, how do we use data? How do we help districts to use data? How do we help the departments that we worked with, the various state departments, because those were really the primary partners in the early days. How could we help them to use that data to look at impacting policy, looking at where resources were being driven and where technical assistance and training was necessary? And so that was also hand in glove with using data. that was also a time period when there was exponential growth in evidence-based practices. If you remember prior in the 80s, there wasn't a lot of evidence-based data that met the gold standard on what was changing behavior, what was changing outcomes. And with the advent of more information being available on effective practices, you could drive resources where you thought that it was necessary and where you thought that you could make changes. So again, I think that work has continued to this day, and the center has even led evaluation projects to look at exactly that, is what is working in particular areas to make changes over time for kids and families.
Yeah, I agree so much with that. I think in my early days, what impressed me and made me most proud about working at the center was our ability to really gather that research data and trends in the field and be able to take that information and create innovative programs and products and services that help to provide the Department of Education or Health or whatever partner we were working with at the time with resources that really had an impact on the field, those positive outcomes that you spoke about that really before weren't even being thought about a lot. So I so agree with the data informed decision making that we, at least here in Pennsylvania, helped to lead that work. So in thinking about, we talked a little bit about the Center for Safe Schools, and I think about our partnerships that we were able to develop with state agencies like welfare, now Human Services, and Department of Education, Department of Labor. And under your tenure, we were also able to really engage foundations like Highmark and the Mott Foundation, to really expand and diversify our funding streams here at the center. So can you tell me a little bit about the importance of partnerships while you were director at the center?
Absolutely. Partnerships were and continue to be just the bedrock foundation of the work that the center did and continues. I think the key there was being a trusted partner. And, Celeste, that we frequently would joke internally that we were Switzerland, that, we were going to be there regardless of what party was in office. We were providing information, quality services to people. We were and are a public service agency. So becoming that trusted partner and delivering for what we were asked to deliver really became the driving force for the center. And those partnerships continued to grow, those state partnerships, federal partnerships that, request from various places to come and serve as expert, panelists, to, have our staff go out and be recognized for the value that they had. Those are all things that contributed to those partnerships and to being able to present those to folks as relationships that we had of organizations that trusted us. And, again, that continued to grow.
Right. And I think of our role as a statewide intermediary too, and how important partnerships have been, as you said, and people having the perspective that we serve as a Switzerland, right? That we don't necessarily have any dog in the fight other than to provide the best information from the most trusted resources and develop products and services like reports, task force, convening task force and things like that, so that people can really trust that the information that they're getting is of the highest quality and that they can make the best decisions based on that information. So again, thank you for setting that standard for the organization as we continue to operate in that way in our current state and in our future state as well. One of the things that, when you say we, I smile because you still are a mentor to me and very trusted confidant and colleague as we think about the future of the Center for Schools and Communities. And of course, you know, a lot of our work is around providing professional learning opportunities to districts and community-based organizations. And during COVID, we really had to pivot from that more face-to-face offering that we provided across the state and nation and to a virtual space. And as we come back to offering more face-to-face opportunities, what are you seeing and hearing from other colleagues in the field? Because you are still, even though you're retired from this position, you are still active in the world of education service agencies. So what are you hearing that districts, community-based organizations are in need of during this post-COVID era?
That's a great question. You know, a reflection on, you know, on how the center was positioned prior to COVID, I think is in order here. You know, there are staff at the center who, you know, I think the beauty of the center is the synergies that exist with, you know, very bright people who are, you know, very engaged with lots of different networks and bringing information in. And way before its time, you know, you had staff folks there who were saying, hey, this online learning is something, we need to be on these online platforms, and who did the research and who established, even when people were resistant to doing work in this fashion, the center was already doing it. So you were well positioned to be able to move forward into this area. You know, personally, that a lot of work that I do is on a national basis now. And of course, almost everything that we do is online, that we're doing online learning. You know, I find that people are more receptive to it. There are some downsides, obviously, but I think that it is something that is not going to go away. Everything that I've read indicates that businesses are going to stay with hybrid models of work that are going to help people to feel like they can go back into the workspace for amounts of time, but also have that time when they're not, that they still can be as productive. And I think that lends itself to saying that online learning is going to continue to be part of our lives in the immediate future. It will continue to be something that schools are going to be using for students as well as for their own staff development. So I think investments there are key in making sure that there's, you know, there are ways that people can have that hybrid experience and that it can be as rich as if we were face to face.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, as we come back, or I should say, maybe enter this new normal of post-pandemic and what our world looks like, especially in education, that it really is this blending of hopefully what we learned, the best practices of what we learned through COVID, and being able to integrate them into our daily practice and operation. So as we continue to move forward, looking forward to the center being on the precipice of that work as well. So I think our last question that I'd like to ask you is, what would your vision be for the center for the next 35 years, or what would your hope be for us as we continue this work?
Well, that's a big question, a really big question to think about. What will the world look like in the next 35 years? I think the continued, this continued presence that the center has, this continued diversification and looking at it. I think you've done a really good job collectively at determining that you can't be all things to all people. So you've honed in on your core values and on the work that you think is most important and thinking about how those partnerships can come together. I think the strength and the beauty in the work of the center is that it is collaborative and not competitive, that you look at engaging partners in the work. And that is, that's a unique thing. I think that, and you can carry that forward and preach that to other folks as well, because that is the way that you get things done. And always remembering that we are public servants and continue to be, and that makes a critical difference in terms of how you approach your work, and helping all of the staff to understand that that is what you are, and that work will continue to evolve. That is another strength too, that the center has always been able to evolve, to look at how do they use past work to build on to meet the next kind of challenges that are existing, and to stay current on data, and to keep the work then focused on what is the most important thing that schools and communities need to be able to do the best for the people that they serve.
Again, thank you, Lynn, for your time today, but thank you even more for your leadership here at the Center for Schools and Communities. Certainly, you have been the impetus for the growth and development and the amazing history that we have over these past 35 years.